the entire world cannot stop paying attention to what the Middle East is doing. We can see an Italian MP has just come out and said it's only a matter of time before they create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Let's not forget, they've got a $2.3 trillion GDP, but it wasn't just Italy who saw a little bit of Bitcoin FOMO this week. We've even seen Brazil push forward a law that I think is really interesting, especially when you consider that they've got a $2.2 trillion GDP. Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start thinking about what happens with this nation state race for Bitcoin and what exactly could be the end game.
To print their own currency to buy Bitcoin wins. Right? Like, Tom, look what MicroStrategy did.
Now, again, that's interesting, but today I want to talk about the Middle East. And Michael has had some choice words for these Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds previously.
Tell me, if you're a sovereign wealth fund, Saudi Arabia, the United Emirates, Kuwait, how would you be diversifying that portfolio? How much Bitcoin would you own?
All of it. Look, to tell you the truth, I think it's kind of an IQ test. It's like if you had $1 billion and you wanted to double it, you would buy the $1 billion of Bitcoin and put out a press release. But if you wanted to make $1 trillion, you would try to buy as much as my company has right now. You go buy $50 billion worth of Bitcoin and just keep buying, and it'd be $1 trillion to you. So you ought to buy as much as you want money, right?
Yeah.
I think that my forecast for Bitcoin is it goes up 29% a year compounded for 21 years, which is going to be 3-4 times better than the next best thing. So yeah, I could tell you, yeah, put 5% of your portfolio in it, but smarter would be to put 150% of your portfolio in it. If you want 10 extra money, you buy Bitcoin. If you want 100 extra money, you buy Bitcoin with somebody else's money. And if you want 1,000 extra money, you use somebody else's money, buy Bitcoin, and you lever it, right? The simplest thing going is borrow money at 3, 4, 5%, invest it at 30 to 60%, keep the difference. My company went from a $600 million enterprise value to $108 billion enterprise value in 4.5 years, and we just did that formula. We're just levering it. So I think as much as you can get is the right answer.
So again, I played this clip for you guys previously, but I'm really interested in this question. Why is Michael Saylor paying so much attention to the Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds? Of course, that has to do with this chart I've got prepared for you guys. If we have a look at the largest sovereign wealth funds around the world, what do you notice about them? 4 out of the top 8 is from the Middle East. We've got the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority of 990 billion, then we've got Kuwait, then we've got Saudi Arabia, and then we've got Qatar with their $450 billion sovereign wealth fund. And again, this most recent piece of news that came out today, with the Dubai government officially approving Bitcoin options buying for all of its retail clients. This isn't the first little domino we've seen fall in the Middle East. Like Michael Saylor said in that interview we just played for you guys, their sovereign wealth fund already owns nearly $500 million worth of BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF product. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we saw this here. The UAE state giant Emirates just signed a deal for Bitcoin and crypto payment integration. That's right, you might be able to fly halfway around the world in one of the biggest Middle Eastern companies, or let's just say one of the biggest companies around the world when it comes to travel, and they might also be accepting Bitcoin. This is big, this is massive, and I think this is why we're now starting to see a little bit of FOMO spread to the rest of the world. Of course, what are we talking about? Well, let's maybe, before we get into talking about Brazil, let's talk about Italy. Now, Italy is just a really interesting case. They're obviously one of the bigger European countries who I've speculated for some time will be going the way of the CBDC, or slavery, okay? They look very hell-bent on pushing their citizens into adopting a form of money that steals from them. That's a central bank digital currency. Before we talk about what Christine Lagarde just did at the head of the ECB, let's kind of talk about the positive angle, because we can see some of these really big, meaningful G10 nations in Europe is now going the other way. It's saying, yeah, I don't want that slavery. Maybe I want some Bitcoin, some freedom money. We could see an Italian MP came out today, and he actually said it would be inevitable that Italy actually creates and establishes a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this is huge. Italy, in this blue line on this chart, they're a bigger economy than Spain. Just to put that into perspective, Spain has essentially conquered the world, but Italy is bigger. They've got a bigger GDP. They're a G10 country. And wouldn't it be huge if they adopted Bitcoin? I think this is big and this is interesting, but Italy is actually falling behind what countries like Brazil are doing. So I also saw this come out this week. I don't know why, but it's nearly as if Monday and Tuesday this week was like the nation state FOMO week. Who knows why? Maybe that's because we did see, what was it, Crypto Week in Washington? Was that last week or the week before? I don't remember exactly. Time flies over here in France. But I do think it's interesting that maybe the rest of the world is starting to respond to what America is doing. So this one dropped this morning on Twitter. Brazil's parliament is holding its first hearing on a national strategic Bitcoin reserve in 14 days' time. Like the tweet says, this is huge because Brazil is the largest economy in South America. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we do know they're a $2.2 trillion economy. That would have to nearly put them in the top 10 globally. If not, they're probably the top 15. They're a really, really, really big economy. Wow, okay. No, they are the 7th largest economy in the world. There you go. That's massive. And let's not forget the news of Brazil last year when that came out. They were talking about diversifying 5% of their foreign international reserves into Bitcoin. This is, I think this is happening in a lot more, let's say Brazil is ahead of the curve. I think that's a way to frame it. There's a lot of these countries like Italy, they've just got a couple of politicians whispering the B word, the Bitcoin word, okay? Because they know it will probably get them some clicks. But this isn't the first time we've seen some real action come out of Brazil. I mean, this is happening. This isn't some fake document that I just showed you. Brazil is openly investigating Bitcoin. This is really, I think it's really positive, and I think they obviously have absolutely no choice but to do this. And they're not the only nation state investigating Bitcoin right now. I've got another clip I want to play for you. Let's listen to what Matt Hogan thinks is going to happen in this nation state race that I think is just starting to heat up.
The US, we found out that Abu Dhabi bought $500 million of Bitcoin. We've gotten calls from multiple other governments that are investigating Bitcoin. I think you're going to see 10, maybe more governments around the world make their first allocation to Bitcoin this year. It's happening. People aren't talking about it that much, but it's happening and it's a very big deal.
I think it's a huge deal. We even have smaller nations like Ethiopia, where the state of Ethiopia has already made an absolute killing of their Bitcoin position. We can see they've made $55 million mining Bitcoin with surplus hydroelectric power. This is the big thing I think people miss with Bitcoin mining. It's just the most economical thing there is in the world. Like, this isn't rocket science, just to use excess energy and plug it into Bitcoin. We can see, obviously, Ethiopia is a little bit of a smaller country, $121 billion GDP. Obviously, you know, 55 million, that is a rounding error when we're still talking about a country that big, but 55 million, it's not chump change, okay? It's a good start, just finding 55 million pennies sitting in the corner of your couch cushion. You won't complain if you stumble across that. But let's talk a little bit more about what this most recent news that came out of Dubai is today. So we can see here, Laser Digital, they won Dubai's very first over-the-counter crypto options license. Again, is this even a good thing that we have the options market being built out? Some will argue that maybe that'll lead to paper Bitcoin. I'm sure I can hear some people murmuring those words, paper Bitcoin. Sure, who knows whether it's the best thing or not. On this topic, I think it's interesting that we're now seeing in-kind Bitcoin ETFs beginning to be rolled out, because that's obviously an example of how things can change. All of the Bitcoin spot ETFs, when they were launched as cash settled ETFs. But now, we're now beginning to see the signs that we might start to see these ETFs switch back into in-kind redemptions. This would be really bullish, and I think this would put to bed a lot of the rumors that we've been shining a little bit of a spotlight on here on the channel for some time about paper Bitcoin. So again, we've got Dubai pushing to become one of the crypto hubs in the Middle East. Obviously, their sovereign wealth funds invested into Bitcoin. This is big, this is interesting. But again, I kind of mentioned it earlier. This is the week of nation state FOMO, because let's not forget, Indonesia's vice president came out yesterday and said that they're considering adopting Bitcoin as a national reserve as well. Now, Indonesia, I get it. They're on the other side of the world. They're near those big island of Australians who have that funny accent. I don't know how big Indonesia is, and I don't care. Well, I'm here to tell you, they've got a $1.4 trillion GDP. They're massive. They're also a big deal like Brazil. Again, a lot of people don't necessarily think of Brazil as, you know, a top 10 economy in the world. And people just simply don't regard them as being that important. But the facts are right there. They're massive, and so is Indonesia. Indonesia is a huge economic bloc. 1.4 trillion, if I had to guess, that probably puts them in the top 25 economies around the world. They've got a ton of people living in Indonesia, and look at that, they're actually growing really quickly. 5.12% GDP growth in Q2 alone looks insane. Their economy is humdinger. It's moving, it's growing, and it looks as if maybe they're looking for ways or avenues for them to store their excess productivity into, which of course is what Bitcoin could potentially afford them. This is massive. And I just think this week, it could be known as Nation State FOMO week. Again, I've told you guys, I'm not doing a ton of live streams these days. I'm putting my time into maybe doing more deep dive type videos. And I'm only really going to go live when I've got a ton of news that I think is really worth talking about. But I think this is really interesting. So many people, they're hyper concentrated on what Trump is doing, what Jerome Powell is doing. Oh, there's a 90% chance of rate cuts. Wow, I'm going to lose my mind over that. And I think we're missing the bigger picture. The Fed is going to have to print money and lower interest rates. And I think the bigger picture of, you know, what happens to Bitcoin and how Bitcoin is adopted is how quickly do nation states get into Bitcoin. These are the things, the only things that I think really matter. I think what nation states, billionaires, as Matt Hogan exposed, the ETFs want to do, these are the guys we need to be paying much closer attention to. Speaking of Matt Hogan, I want to play the rest of that clip I played for you guys earlier, because there's some really interesting sound bites in here, especially when we're talking about the supply side.
Yeah, so last year ETFs bought 500,000 Bitcoin. Again, remember, the Bitcoin network only produced 165,000 Bitcoin. So it bought 3 times the total supply. Corporations bought 250,000 Bitcoin. Governments, I think this year could buy a couple 100,000 Bitcoin. So I think if you look at those 3 sources, I think they'll buy more than 1 million Bitcoin this year. And where is it going to come from? The only place it can come from is people who already hold Bitcoin. The only way they will sell is if the price goes up. That's why I'm so bullish on the market.
So government? Which branch of the government?
Look, the U.S. already established a strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? It already holds $17 billion in Bitcoin. And the executive order from President Trump told the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Treasury to figure out ways to acquire more Bitcoin without impacting the tax holder. How could they do that? They could sell some of the gold that the US has. They could sell other crypto assets that the US has and plow that into Bitcoin. I think we're going to see that happen this year. I think the US is going to increase, and not just the US. We found out that Abu Dhabi bought $500 million of Bitcoin. We've gotten calls from multiple other governments that are investigating Bitcoin. I think you're going to see 10, maybe more governments around the world make their first allocation to Bitcoin this year.
And when we do see the next 10, 15, or even 20 nation states get into Bitcoin this year, I think this is where we're going to really start to see the acceleration in one of my favorite trends. That, of course, is the accumulation that we're seeing of Bitcoin being gobbled up by the big boys. We're talking about public corporations, private corporations, and nation states. I love checking in on this website. It's my go-to website because it shows us the trend. It shows us how many public companies, private companies, etc. are buying Bitcoin. We can see these entities right now. They're holding 3.65 million Bitcoin. That is approaching, if not just recently surpassing, 15% of the total Bitcoin supply. This is where I think we start entering some interesting realms. Wait on a minute. These guys who don't look as if they're ever going to sell their Bitcoin, that looks like countries and public corporations, these guys hold 3.5 million coin, but there's only 2.4 million Bitcoin left on exchanges, and we're supposed to see another 10 nation states want to allocate to Bitcoin this year. I think this is where we're going to start entering some really interesting realms here. This is where I think we're going to have to start to see nation states printing money to buy Bitcoin. I just don't think this is an option. Nation states are going to have to print money to buy Bitcoin. We've got a few of you guys in the chat obviously exposing the scam that is fractional reserve banking. And obviously this is where what I think is really interesting about Bitcoin. Nation states have a money printer. They're going to print money to buy Bitcoin. And when we finally see just how rare and scarce physical Bitcoin is, things are going to get incredibly interesting. Now, again, we've talked a lot about ETF demand today. We've talked a lot about public companies and all of that good stuff. But again, there is absolutely no second best when it comes to buying your Bitcoin. If you've got Bitcoin on an exchange, or if you trust in BlackRock with your Bitcoin, please reconsider how you're storing your generational wealth. I think you should only be holding Bitcoin in your own custody. This is obviously why I always encourage you guys to put your Bitcoin in something like this. This is a hardware wallet. This is actually one of the newest hardware wallets on the market right now. It's a little touchscreen hardware wallet that you guys can get from Ledger. I think they're really cool. Touchscreens are dope. I think touchscreens are super easy for people to use. Again, if you want to actually get your hands on one of these touchscreen hardware wallets from Ledger, they're even going to give you guys $10 of free Bitcoin if you buy one of these puppies with the link down below in the description. So again, take self-custody of your Bitcoin. I know we do talk a lot about the Bitcoin ETFs and the public companies buying Bitcoin. And again, I never like to endorse buying of publicly traded companies. I do prefer that you guys just keep it simple, buy your own Bitcoin, put it in a hardware wallet like this, and then obviously go and protect your Bitcoin the way it should be protected. Again, if you do want to get your hands on some of the other cool new hardware wallets that Ledger's got, they've got the Ledger Flex, they've got the Ledger Stacks, and then they've got the old school Ledger Nano X and Nano S's. And again, I will encourage you guys, once you've got your hands on the Bitcoin, never, ever, ever write down your Bitcoin on paper. Always back it up on titanium. Again, there is so many stories of people losing their Bitcoin, having written it down on paper. I always encourage you, do not write down your Bitcoin on paper. Just keep it simple, punch it into some titanium, and you'll sleep better. You can get 15% off anything you want to buy from Stampseed with that promo code Luke15. And of course, while we're talking about keeping it simple, I always encourage you guys, explore your options. If you don't want a touchscreen hardware wallet that Ledger makes, you can also get your hands on something like a Trezor. The Trezor Safe 5, it's fully open source code base. It's Bitcoin only, super simple, super easy to use. I highly recommend you check out one of those, and you can also use the link down below in the description if you want to get your hands on a Trezor. Both Trezor and Ledger, they've been in the Bitcoin space for more than 12 years. They were both the first Bitcoin hardware wallet companies on the market in 2013 and 2014. Again, I think they're a great option for you guys to store your Bitcoin correctly. Do not be like the nation states who I guarantee will not be storing their Bitcoin correctly. They're too focused on buying paper Bitcoin or trusting BlackRock. That is what the UAE's sovereign wealth fund has done. They've actually, from memory, bought like, what is it, $500 million of BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. I think it was like 400 million. Okay, here we go. Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund reveals a $408 million investment into BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. Again, this is great for adoption. This is great for number go up, obviously. But still, guys, I would highly encourage you guys to buy the real thing, buy Bitcoin, put it in a hardware wallet. No hardware wallets are hijackable. All hardware wallets are very safe and secure. Again, never trust hot wallets with your Bitcoin. I won't go down the rabbit hole of hot wallets versus cold wallets today, but I would just say buy your Bitcoin and zoom out a little bit. I'd love to actually check in, see where the price of Bitcoin is at right now. Somebody believes we're going to $103,000. All I will say is, hey, I'm going to be incredibly happy if Bitcoin gets to $103,000. I did see some people complaining that Bitcoin was crashing, and I just sent them this chart during the week. Hang on a minute, guys. Are we really crashing when you zoom out here? Where is this infamous crash? All I see is green candles and Bitcoin going up and to the right. How can we call this a crash? This is insane. Seriously, how? Where's the crash on this chart? All I can say is I'm incredibly bullish for the next 6 months. Nobody knows where the price of Bitcoin is going in the short term, but all I'm going to say is, look, I'm bullish. I think number is going to go up tremendously from here, especially with the amount of support we're now beginning to see from serious nation states like the Middle East, who is not just allowing options market trading, but they're out there openly plowing $500 million into Bitcoin ETFs. This is incredibly bullish. I don't think that these guys are going to walk back on their pro-Bitcoin stance. The Middle East is just accelerating their move into Bitcoin. And for me, I don't think Bitcoin is boring. Although you could classify this bull run as being pretty boring, MSM. I'll give you that. Shout out to you for tuning in on Twitter. I'm sure the large majority of the 670 of you guys are over there on YouTube. And what I think is interesting is, okay, we do have rumors of Donald Trump making an announcement. Who knows? Maybe these nation states are front-running Donald Trump. I don't know. It's a possibility. I do know that there's a little bit of chaos going on right now in America with Donald Trump and obviously Jerome Powell. Right now, I believe we're going to see interest rates cut in September. Now, this could be really interesting. Okay, we've got interest rate cuts coming in September. Interest rate cuts. What do you think this is going to mean for Bitcoin? Again, a lot of people kind of said, Bitcoin is just a low interest rate phenomena. The only reason it rallied so aggressively in 2020 was because we cut interest rates to zero. Some people seriously had that opinion back in 2020 and 2021. And of course, now you cannot make that argument. Now, interest rates have been risen from 0 to about 4% in America. That's where the Fed funds rate is. And guess what? Bitcoin's at $120,000 per coin. So again, I think if we do start getting these interest rate cuts that many people believe we are about to see, things could certainly begin to heat up here in a pretty big way. We might finally start to see that next leg of the bull run where Bitcoin isn't so boring anymore. Again, I don't pay a ton of attention to macro anymore, because macro, there is no other option in the macro realm. They're going to have to print money, debase the money, and expand the monetary base over the next 10 years to bail out the government who has a ton of debt. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter whether you want to get into semantic arguments over who creates the money, who prints the money. Oh, but technically the Fed is independent. Oh, but technically the Fed is buying bonds off the government. It doesn't matter how you cut the cookie. The matter of facts statement and fact and reality is that over the next 10 years, the money supply is going to have to be increased. Interest rates are probably going to struggle to be raised substantially. This means Bitcoin is going to have to go up. It's as simple as that. This is why we're seeing the world and a lot of the central banks out of Europe start talking about a CBDC. They want to cut out the commercial banking sector. Okay, naturally, this has a lot of people scared. A lot of people are like, oh, but what happens if they close my bank account? Are my savings cancelled like they are in China? Well, they probably will be if you leave your money in the bank and if you trust the banks. Again, I always encourage you guys to not trust the banks. I always encourage you to get your hands on the full Bitcoin stack, okay? We buy Bitcoin, we put it into self-custody, and if you ever want to sell your Bitcoin or use some of that Bitcoin for any way, shape, or form, you use a trusted platform like Firefish, which enables you to borrow against your Bitcoin, but they don't rehypothecate your Bitcoin. They don't take custody of your Bitcoin. This is why they are a part of my Bitcoin bull market stack. As you can see, I've already taken a couple of loans on Firefish to test them out. I think they're a great product. I think, again, they are one of the only borrowing companies in the space that does not take custody of a Bitcoin. They use peer-to-peer loans on the Bitcoin lending market. So again, if you do want a discount, they're even going to give you a 30% discount on your first loan if you use a promo code Luke and sign up using the link down below in the description. These are the guys I'm using for my Bitcoin bull run exit strategy, so to say. If you are looking to borrow against your Bitcoin, again, be very responsible. Never borrow too much against your Bitcoin stack. Run all of the calculations and the simulations to make sure that you never over leverage yourself. Whether Bitcoin drops by 50%, 75%, 85%, you need to be very protected and be cautious. Don't go putting 50% of your stack on a borrowing platform. But if you do want to be responsible, I think Firefish is the best option to actually borrow against your Bitcoin. Again, we talk about this so much. We talk about retiring on Bitcoin, but so many people are like, Luke, I shouldn't sell my Bitcoin. That's correct. You should never sell your Bitcoin. You borrow against it. Hopefully indefinitely. This is an interesting take. They'll crash the market by end of 2026. Who knows? I mean, if they crash the market, they make themselves bankrupt. If we're talking about governments. Governments need stocks to go up and up and up so that tax receipts go up and up and up. This is the only way you pay back your debt. Increased taxes, increased asset bubbles, increased money printing, increased inflation. Never sell your Bitcoin, Ricky. Never sell your Bitcoin. My exit strategy is to always be 100% Bitcoin. My personal stack is never going to change. It's going to be that number. Let's say it's 0.1 Bitcoin. That's my personal stack. With all that said, guys, hope this update was useful. If you do want to learn a little bit more about what is coming in the Bitcoin space and why bureaucrats in the UK and Europe is trying to cancel free speech, roll out digital IDs, and try to trap you in a CBDC system that might freeze your savings. I did 2 deep dives on this topic recently. After this live stream is finished, I'm going to put links to both of those videos somewhere around there. And stay tuned to a massive deep dive video that I've got planned to come out tomorrow. It's a video I've probably put way too much time and effort into, but I hope it's insightful and I hope you guys enjoy it. So stay on the lookout for that. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next stream.